SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit SaferWatchApp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Today, like every guest, this is a special guest, but Corporal Jeffery, JP James Potts from the Orange County Sheriff's Office is a dynamic person, and I really am genuinely personally excited that you're here. And when people find out why, they'll understand the connotation. But how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. And you're on day shift right now?
No, God, no. I'm on like a swing shift. I'm on our anti-cop squad or community relations squad, so we work a later shift. So
Okay.
This is early for me.
Okay. Wow. Well, thanks for getting up, man. We could have done it later.
No. Happy to be here.
Okay. Well, tell our listeners about you. How did you went to the military and you got out and you wound up in Orlando? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So joined the Army back when I was still like a young, I would say young teenager, but I was 20. Did 4 years in active service. Got out, joined the reserves, and I did some contracting stuff. I did some stuff in between. I've always wanted to be a cop or in law enforcement. My grandfather rose to be the chief of law enforcement operations down in Broward County. My dad was a canine handler there for a long time, retired out of there about, say, 6-7 years ago now. So it's always been something I've just been attracted to. And when I just found myself kind of without purpose and missing that camaraderie and teamwork that was in the military, but I wanted to be close to home and always finding the appeal of law enforcement, I went looking around. I grew up actually in Polk County with my mom, and so everybody knows the great Grady Judd, who's the sheriff there. I actually spoke with members of the agency, and it was a phenomenal interview. Spoke with them, it was well. But I remember I listened to a news article on Fox 35, and it was then Sheriff Demings talking, and I heard his accent, and I found it kind of like, okay, this guy. But then I heard his level of detail and what he was talking about, his attention to what he's thinking about, his stance and forward progress in technology, and the direction he wanted to move his agency. And I was really impressed. I was like, oh, this is something. So that's what led me to Orange County instead of going somewhere else. Just because I really appreciate that, and it's a tough environment, and it's a lot of not only opportunity, but a lot of opportunity to shine through adversity here, which I really do appreciate.
Hey, that's very interesting because for our listeners, tell our folks that aren't from Florida, what's it like to work in Orlando and Orange County?
So it's a very different dynamic, because not only do you have your residents that inhabit the county, but you have to deal with millions and millions of tourists, just because we're the tourist capital of the country. And it's something interesting to go from responding to a neighborhood call and dealing with repeat issues with the neighborhood to, if you're slotted in the assignment for it, respond to international guests who have issues with passports or have been victim of some sort of other related criminal activity. just because they're in those areas, and you have to battle through language barriers, cultural differences. You have to battle, like, understand, like, the amount of times I've had to go to the consulate list and what consulates we have to notify in reference to different situations. It's something I never thought would encounter in law enforcement, and it's just something that's normal in Orange County. And there's deputies who do it far greater than me, but it's pretty cool. It's something I thought I wouldn't experience, and it's just cool to have that level of dynamic. And then plus, it's just a big population center too, so there's always something interesting going on.
So it's an international city, right? I mean, like you said, all customs, cultures, everything comes there.
Yes, sir. And I mean, I wouldn't separate us too far from Miami, because Miami is a major, metropolitan area of its own. But we have some consulates present and things like that. So again, just an understanding and dealing with that dynamic, and plus the diversity of our population. It's and trying to work through some of those language barriers and things like that to affect great investigations and try to help people as best you can.
So in contrast, you get I just looked it up. That's why I was looking at my phone for a second.
Sure.
80 million visitors a year come to the Orlando metropolitan area. 80 million, and by comparison, the Daytona Beach area gets 10 million a year. So that's a staggering number. So, and the reason I wanted you to kind of paint a picture, because for our listeners, there's 67 counties in Florida. Florida is wide and diverse. It's not all beaches and palm trees. It's not all Mickey Mouse. There's a lot of rural sheriff's offices with maybe 17 deputies, and they deal a lot with agriculture. They deal a lot with some immigration, or they even deal with farm theft. And here you are right in the middle of Central Florida with 80 million visitors, and the diversity of the people that visit there. And all of you, not just you, but all of you guys have to be on your toes and exposed to a lot of things and trained in multiple areas besides just basic law enforcement.
No, absolutely. And if I can highlight a rural location, I grew up a couple of years in Holmes County, which is a stark difference to Orange County. So it's up in the Panhandle, north of Panama City, for those who aren't familiar. It's a very unpopulated area. And you want to talk about the level of professionalism you have to adhere to at an agency. I remember talking to deputies up there when I was in high school for the couple of years I was there. Their night shift goes 10-8 at the time. Hopefully it's better now, but they were 10-8 with one deputy for the entire county. And their backup was a phone call or an on-call. So you had to respond to calls in the county, domestic violence calls, any in-progress calls, active situations. And you're going by yourself. Your guy has to wake up, get a uniform on, and jump out and go respond to back you up. Like, the moral turpitude to have to go to that, I find impressive. So it's a hobby of mine, I guess you could say. I like to infrequently check on Holmes County and Sheriff Tate, who's up there as the current sheriff, and just like see what those deputies go through. And I feel like we get a lot of attention in Orange County, and the amazing work we do here is rightfully deserved, and I'll brag about that all day long. But what deputies are doing in more rural locations with fewer resources, and just the incredible character and capability of those deputies up there, could be more floored.
JP, ironically, I spent all of yesterday in Chipley in Washington County.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we did a leadership class. Me and a friend of mine named Chief Chris Summers. He retired from Leon County SO, and we did a class about how to manage the mediocrity and not go the way where you become a toxic employee and try to find your why. But we spent all day in Chipley with Sheriff Cruz, and you're right. Those people, they're a special breed, and there may be two deputies on duty the whole time. Yesterday we got there, the class was late because a majority of the folks that worked there got involved in a major incident, and that means like 8 people that were supposed to be in class were out in the field, and it's staggering. But anyway, so getting back to you, my friend. So what do you do now with Orange County? You're a corporal, and you're assigned to what unit?
So I'm in our community-oriented policing squad unit, or community-oriented policing service, depending on how you define the acronym. But we are an anti-crime unit, similar to like a street crimes investigations unit with a little bit of a twist. So we focus on those things, high crime areas, problematic issues, anything that needs to be identified within our geographical location. I'm assigned to the south area of Orange County, known as Sector 4, which If you're familiar with it, is like Orange Blossom Trail and everything south of downtown to the Osceola County border. And then on the other side of that, we support community events and community relations. Just recently, myself and my sergeant supported our PAL unit with a Shop with a Cop event. We've also helped out with parking lot security, as strange as that sounds, for the turkey giveaway at Orange County, because apparently it's very dynamic, which was something I learned, which was great. It was a great learning experience, and I was glad to be part of it, but it was very interesting. So it's cool to see how we flip a switch and we go from being very, interactive with the public, supporting our local communities. And at the same time, we're looking for, a lot of narcotics, stolen vehicles, violent offenders that we're trying to locate and apprehend. So that is our primary focus.
Yeah, so you're right. So one day, you're working a swing shift, so that usually is like 2 to 2, 3 to 3. And you come in and you're working, car break-ins, prostitution, drugs, OBT. If people don't know it, OBT is a busy, somewhat seedy area at times. No offense, we all have them in every county and city. And then the next day, you could be public-facing, helping kids, being a good role model, or handing out turkeys and things like that. So that's what law enforcement is. And there's an old saying about sheriffs just don't solve crimes; they solve problems, and that's what you're doing. So
interesting. That's pretty cool, and that's a big reason why I work for sheriff's office of police department too. Is obviously it's rooted in family tradition, but I like the idea that my boss is directly selected by the population. I love that. It sounds as strange as it is, but I love that direct accountability and direction that the community has when it selects its leaders. So I think that's pretty cool. It's dynamic.
Yeah, every 4 years he gets a very public evaluation.
Correct. And which I can be part of myself as an employee who resides in Orange County. So I love to tell my wife, like, hey, I get elected my boss every single year. So
that's right. There's a true 360 evaluation right there.
Right.
That's a great point. Great point. So tell us, I met you. We're going to be candid, okay? And if there's something we need to be not candid about, we can untalk about it later. But you and I met at PCIS, which is FDLE's Post-Critical Incident Seminar. By the way, there's one coming up in January. It's a class for command staff, captains or higher. And you and I met there. We were at the same table, but not next to each other. And I didn't know your story, and then I heard your story, and I was amazed at the strength and resiliency that you have. Could you share a version of what happened to you, what you lived through, how you've built back?
Sure. So back in 2020, right when the COVID-19 thing was happening, I decided to be that aggressive go-getter deputy one day near International Drive, where SeaWorld and New Epic Universe Park and all that is located. And I did a traffic stop in that area. And I'm not trying to say anything is a typical stop, but it was a typical stop. I was just doing a lot of traffic stops over that weekend. Made contact with a couple of individuals inside the vehicle with some narcotics. And doing the investigations that we do, it was enough to, it's a crime. So I'm taking them to jail, just going through the steps. There was nothing interesting that actually happened at the car that was exciting. It was just traffic stop, identified the violations, spoke with all the persons involved, secured them, and they were transported over to the jail. And I'm truncating this, and I'm happy to go into more detail. But when I got to the jail, it quickly devolved. One of the suspects was concealing a firearm on their person. And when I say on the person, on the individuals, I wouldn't say
they were a rotund person.
Yes,
they were large, rotund person, and
yes.
they had concealed a weapon in the folds of their skin. Is that fair?
100%. I'm trying to think of a way to say that without sounding demeaning. Although I believe personally that the individual involved deserves it, but just because of the dynamic. But he concealed a firearm. Our full body scanning machine was down. Difference with Orange County with a majority of not all, but majority of other counties is that we don't run our jail. So I go in completely sterilized because Orange County Corrections run that. So they dictate all law enforcement personnel that go inside, no weapons of any sort, including taser, less lethals. The full body scanning machine was down. I didn't search. A whole lot of things happened that resulted in me being taken hostage. And
hit pause right there for just a second.
Sure.
All right. Say that. What happened to you?
I was taken hostage.
Okay, thanks. You don't hear that. You don't hear the average citizen say that. You certainly don't hear a deputy sheriff say that. So let me go back and just unpack something. So again, 67 counties in Florida. Each one is run a little bit different. Not all 67 counties have a jail that's run by the sheriff. There are several counties in the state of Florida where the jail is run by the county commission. Orange County is one of those rare counties where there's a director of the jail. He or she does not answer to the sheriff. They don't necessarily have a relationship with the sheriff. It's siloed off. And as a deputy, you go to the jail, you have to adhere to the county's procedures, their policies, regardless of your sheriff is the duly elected sheriff of the county and has more authority than anybody, but you still have to answer to the jail rules, right?
Correct.
Okay. And again, there's nothing routine in law enforcement, but there are things that can be mundane. And there's that quote about law enforcement is 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror,
Yeah.
right? And so this is your day. Okay. All right. So you go into the jail. You've de-armed yourself, if you will, and you're going through the normal prisoner protocol and the Sally Port, and then Murphy's Law, alive and well, the body scan's down.
And the correctional officer inside isn't even doing a physical search. He was searching with like a metal detection wand instead of going hands-on with the individual. I like to joke that I've not seen narcotics that be detected with a metal detection wand, but to each their own. And they have adjusted their procedure since then. It's if I criticize as a personal opinion, it's not a reflection of my agency. I just want to put that out there, but
It's your lived experience.
Yeah, and I just remember, like, time's an interesting thing. Some people say things move very, very quickly for them. In certain circumstances, like, oh, I lived my life so quickly. I went through my career so fast. My kids grew up so fast. And that's all, I'm sure that's absolutely true. I've never felt time move so slowly. So everything seemed to slow down the moment I saw the silver finish on the handgun produce itself. I remember I felt like training kicked in because I felt like my body was doing things that I didn't understand was happening. I remember going to my knee and I'm completely sterilized, and I go to an empty holster because I was ready to address the threat, and it wasn't there. And this all happens in a matter of seconds. I'm thinking I don't understand what I'm doing until I'm doing it. I remember getting on my radio, and I remember saying the word gun and hitting my emergency button. And I changed my radio channel to another channel. Again, just thinking I don't want to hear what's going on outside. But I can't explain. I wasn't even thinking about doing this. I was just doing it. I don't know if it was just rehearsed practice or something I was subconsciously going through. Because in the entire dynamic of things, it felt surreal. It felt like a training exercise. I like to joke that I was waiting for a red shirt to come in, which those unfamiliar, those who host and control training environments are usually instructors, and make fun of me, which didn't happen. And it didn't feel legitimate. And the dynamic of who was running the show or who was in charge of that room flipped so quickly. The correctional officer was proned out. The nurse who was in the room immediately went under the desk, and it was a small room. If you put a couple bedrooms together, that's about the entire size of this little medical evaluation room. The doors sealed, and they're not fast-moving doors. So I'm sealed in this very large cell without any help, and it became intense because I became subservient to what he wanted to do. He was like, his initial request was, give me the keys to your car. So my first thought is, I want to piss this guy off, and what's the harm of giving him some car keys? And I'm just going through the rhythm, so I take the keys off the belt loop, and I happily threw them over him. I don't know if happily is the word, but, I was just like, anything to appease the guy. And then I remember when he said to open the door, and I could feel that's when my first logical thinking started to really start clicking during these moments, because I'm like, there's my car's outside, both my long guns that I had at the time, a shotgun and a rifle, are outside. So is my sidearm and the car itself. And I just thought, I can't let him get access to that, because for that moment, I just couldn't help but think, if he got access to that and had access to these weapons, that he's going to harm other people. So I couldn't let him. So I remember I went over to the door. After he told me to go have them open the door, I hit the button on the side for a little intercom system. I was like, hey, he wants the door open, but don't let him. He goes, he's with the correctional officer. He bends down, takes handcuffs off the correctional officer, not me, which I'm strange as it sounds, I'm so happy it was the correctional officer's handcuffs, not my own, because handcuff my own handcuffs, I don't know how I would like that. I not that it matters, but it mattered in that moment. I remember he came over to me. He secured me in handcuffs. I like to joke that he didn't check for fit or double lock, so it was a policy violation.
Yeah.
He puts me on my knees, does a little cursory pat down, and again I'm in handcuffs. He brings me back up, pulls me to him like a human shield, and he puts the gun to my head. And that is the moment I knew I was going to die that day. I thought that was it. I truly believed it. And I just remember everything just kind of slowed down, and I had this like internal panic and remorse and regret about my entire corporeal existence up leading to that point.
Yeah. Well, I have chill bumps, as I always do when you tell this story. So take a few breaths and let me just recap something. So again,
Sure.
For our listeners, for you to master something, we have to do it like 10,000 times for you to master something and for it to become a schema in your brain where you don't even think about it. Subconsciously, you just do it. And what JP is describing is the thousands of times he's handcuffed somebody and we were taught to stick our finger in between the handcuff to see if there's enough room so we don't damage anybody's wrist. The thousands of times we're in a defensive tactics scenario and it went south and somebody came in and blew a whistle in a red shirt and they're like, okay, here's what you did wrong. And we rise or we fall to the level of our training. And JP, you went right along with the training you got and you rose to it, in my opinion, because even on top of that, I don't know how John Kramer would have responded to what you did. All right. But you had the wherewithal to go, hey, I can't let him get out to my car. If he gets turned loose with all this equipment, there's going to be a major incident. And even then, you're selfless. You're selfless. And people need to recognize that you were selfless when you did that. You were protecting the people outside the sally port and the gate. So he wasn't probably too happy with you when you said that in the intercom. So what happened then?
So yeah, so he takes the gun, he puts it against my head, and he starts screaming from them to open the door. He's just angry, and he starts saying, "If you don't open this door, I'm going to kill this cop." And not a great sound when he does that. And while he's holding me, and I got my hands behind my back, and he's moving me around, and I'm just kind of going with motion because obviously any resistance here is going to be game over. So I'm trying to maximize what little control I have over what I can do. And it gets magnified because very, very quickly, my partner, who transported him to the jail, and there were some logistical issues. At the time, I drove a Chevy Impala patrol car, so he wouldn't fit mine, so he got to ride my partner's. Yeah. And so my partner had turned around trying to investigate my weird radio traffic and when I hit my emergency button. And I remember him getting out of his car, and he's got this gun drawn, and he's the most. I can't explain the image of what I saw in the face. Just the anger, the anguish, screaming. It's like I felt helpless, but seeing helplessness on the outside, especially for someone who has full control of everything they can do. They have a weapon. They are empowered with the training and the skills and the capabilities, and feeling unable to address a threat, to being unable to help their partner. That's what I visually saw in the face, and it was mortifying. He was screaming and crying at the same time. It was, that image, as strange as it sounds through all of it, the images of him and additional deputies and officers responding and seeing their faces, their reaction to what they're encountering, was the most horrifying part of this for me, as strange as it is, because it does get worse, sadly, as the situation goes on. But for me, that's what I lock onto that just terrifies me, because and I know we've talked about this and I have gotten better about it, but I blame myself for a lot of what happens.
I know you do.
I blame myself for doing the traffic stop. I blame myself for making the physical arrest. I remember on scene, my sergeant at the time, he was a great guy. His name is Jeff Guy. He's retired from agency since, an amazing man. Only worked for him very briefly, but great leader. And I remember calling our on-call gangs or on-call narcotics that day about, hey, we have like a large quantity of narcotics. These two guys are gang members. They're moving a lot in Orange County. And both of them were like, hey, listen, it's marijuana. It's Orange County, however you want to infer that statement there. They're not going to prosecute this. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, is it really worth a physical arrest? And Sergeant Guy, who is, again, an amazing leader, was just like, no, that much weight, they're taking the ride. He's just old school. And I respect that. I was like, absolutely. And so that was another decision I felt I had made. Another decision I regret is not searching my bad guy. And I say this, and I hope I don't come off, insensitive, because I do admire the two men I worked with that day, and I admire them since then. They continue to do great things in our agencies. They're still with our agency, amazing deputies and amazing people. I would work with them every single day. But I regret not searching my bad guy. I handed him off to my partner because I went to search the car. I went to get on the phone with those two guys, got on the phone with my supervisors just because there was a lot going on. And I trusted him. And if that situation were replayed today, and I would trust him today. It's just one of those things. You're my partner. Now, would I go put hands on today? Absolutely, from lessons learned. But I'd still trust them. Like, it's just what you do.
Well, hey, first of all, you didn't get sworn in to put on crime blinders, JP. Right? You did not get sworn in to look the other way. You got sworn in to keep the people and the visitors of Orange County safe, and you were doing that day. And I hope that sinks in at some point. And then secondly, I mean, we've all done it. I wore a badge for 30 years. There's been plenty of times when you're in a hurry and you pass a bad guy off or a task off to a squad mate and you trusted him, right? And things happen. Murphy's Law happens. So I just want our listeners to know that it's not like you're like, hey, just handcuff this guy and you threw him in your car and you didn't search him. You guys, it's in the middle of COVID. You're being proactive as you should be. You make an arrest, you have squad mates, partners with you, you pass a task to them, and you come back to search the car, and you're going to go to the jail, do the paperwork, and go from there. So I just want our listeners to be crystal clear that it's not like you're like, hey, just get in the car, and you were nonchalant about what was going on. So anyway, so go ahead. So.
Yeah. So going back to where we were at in the jail, he's moving me around a lot. He's using me as a human shield. And he'll just orient me in front of the direction of other deputies responding at the time because they were the unit agency that's closest. And the jail is also located in Sector 4, where I had worked for quite a bit of time before this incident happened, before I moved to Sector 5 briefly, which is our International Drive area. And all the faces came in, and I recognized every one of them as they're coming into the jail, as this is ongoing. And it was heart-wrenching. And he would just move me around, and he would just continuously scream and shout, if you don't open this door, I'm going to kill this cop. If you don't open this door, I'm going to kill this white cracker cop. Just some dark things, like I was just an object for him to manipulate. It was just that sense of time. It felt like it was longer than what it really was. It felt like I was standing on my feet, moving around with him for 30 minutes. It just felt forever, but it was maybe 5-10 minutes. The guy would eventually withdraw or retreat behind the desk of the nurse's station. The nurse, who I compliment every single time I talk about this, who's the smartest man in this incident. And if you ever have a chance, and I want to shout out FDSA, I've gone around a couple of times with FDSA and Director Kramer, and it's been an incredible experience. And I present the scenario through all the details with footage. And watching the footage and the reactions, especially, again, I compliment the nurse, and I won't shut him up because I haven't gotten his permission to name him specifically, but I cannot commend his forethought in this and handling a situation that he's just kind of thrown into, and the way he did it. I've always been so impressed. And he was just under the desk using cover, and he immediately makes his way out of there when he's directed by our bad guy, behind the x-ray machine. He gets some cover, and the bad guy moves behind the desk, and it gets stranger from there. As strange as I could say, it gets worse as strange as I could say. We go from he leans against the counter with me pulled against him very briefly. There's a point in a moment he gets on the correctional officer radio, and he says, Allah Akbar, God is great, I have COVID-19. And then he throws the correctional radio, and it hits the ground. I remember seeing the battery detach from the handset. And to this day, I don't know what he meant by that. I have no idea. It was just the most strange thing. I don't know if he even knew what he was talking about. It got to a point where he sat me on his lap, or tried to. It was really weird. And I'm not the smallest guy in the world either. So he's like leaning me against him, and I got my hands behind my back, and there's just this thought in my head that I can't. I had accepted I'm going to die. Like, there's no way I'm surviving this encounter. This is the guy I've arrested. I've pissed him off, and he's got a gun. He's got total control, and I'm not seeing a good resolution in this moment. Something's going to happen, and I'm not going to make it out of here. And especially serving in the military, you hear stories. We made jokes when we were in Afghanistan, and please tell me if this is too direct, because I will happily back off. But
there's nothing too direct here. We've dropped the F-bomb. We talk about everything. So go ahead.
No, so I remember my first deployment. I was with some of my guys, and I was both my deployments with the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team, best fighting force in all the nation. Marines, you can deal with it, in my opinion. I'm a very proud paratrooper in that sense. But I remember I was with a soldier who was in my section, and he's one of the smartest men I've ever encountered. And in our ACUs at the time, we had these chest pockets, and we were just talking, it's just as soldiers do. And he goes in one of his chest pockets, and he pulls out a 5.56 round, and we're all like, "Dude, what's that for?" And he's like, "They're not going to capture me." And we're just like, out of nowhere, like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Listen, I got 210 rounds in my combat equipment. This is for me. So if I run out of these 210 rounds, I want to make sure that they don't take me alive, and they keep that round." And we're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Dude," and again, I know we talk about anything, there's no language, but he's like, "I'm not going to be a bitch, get captured. Like, that's not what I'm going to do. They're not going to take me alive." So that stuck with me in that moment for some reason, and I recalled that. And then there was two more things I remembered. And again, it's a very interesting thing about time and how you remember things. And the other two moments were both from the police academy. And they were both instructors. One is a captain who's a patrol captain still, who was a lieutenant then, a captain in one of our sectors right now. And I do admire him. I really do. I do respect him a lot. And I remember he gave a lot of debriefs, and he would talk about incidents throughout the country to give us scenarios. And he was a very intense guy, very hard up on physical training in the sheriff's office. And I just kept thinking, I don't want to be a cliff note for him to say that I was just like some dude like, "Oh, look at this deputy. If you had worked harder, you wouldn't have got taken hostage, and you wouldn't have died, like a little coward. Like, you would have fought." And I'm like, I don't want him to say that I was a coward, that I didn't fight. Like, I was so, as strange as it was, I was so worried about my obituary in this moment. Like, I didn't want to be the coward who just lay down and died. And then the most important thing I remembered was from a man who I absolutely admire, and I consider a personal hero, and he's just a human being. And just because of the incredible man and leader that he is, and it's weird. That's what I'm tearing up about, is just thinking about him, because the amount of time I can rave about the incredible leader this guy is. Also, lieutenant at the time in the academy, got to the position of captain or agency, has since retired, and is now making a crap ton of money on the Space Coast as a contractor, and an amazing human being and a leader I wish I could ever be, and I try to emulate myself behind. But and it was something so small. We were in these little circles doing circuit drills, and I was struggling that day. I was not at my best, and I was falling behind the repetitions. And he in our academy, all of our instructors do the PT with us, which is super cool, because it sets that dynamic, because it shows and these are leaders, these are lieutenants and captains who are just getting after it. And he's in a plank, and he just looks up at me. He doesn't know me from anybody, because we've never spoken in our life. And he just looks at me and just says the words, "Keep fighting." And for some reason, that just drilled into my head. And so I know that sounds like a lot happened in a matter of seconds, but I can't explain how that all just, drew into my head. But I saw the gun on the bad guy's lap, and my hands were behind me, but they were free, because he had put the gun in his lap to try to search me and looking for stuff. And I was like, I got to take this moment to try to go for the gun. And I just thought, if I can get a hold of the gun and hold on to it for a matter of seconds, I don't have to win the fight. I don't have to shoot him. I just have to hold on to it, render it out of battery. Maybe it goes off and hits me in the hand, whatever, it's non-lethal. But if I can get the gun and render it out of battery for 10 seconds, that is enough time for them to get the door open, get in, take out the threat, and maybe have a chance to get out of here. And I just cannot die like a coward. I have to fight. I have to do everything I can. And it was just the one thing I had to try to do. And I couldn't live myself if I didn't. I know, like, live with yourself and you're thinking of a little bit of time. But I couldn't live with myself. So remember, I kind of bounced my hands along his lap a little bit, trying to feel for the gun. And I swear I felt the barrel. I really think I was close when he realized what I was doing. And he stood up, grabbed the gun really, really quickly. And I remember my eyes, I felt like I had like the cartoon Wile E. Coyote eyes there for a second, realizing what happened. And he stood up and he's taller than me. And he was like, he said something. I can't remember to this day what he said. He said something. And I just remember getting punched in the face, and then the magazine in the magazine well just hitting me. And I just remember going down, and I remember falling either on my butt or my knees for a second, and then more strikes, and then loud noises, and then going down, and then things being black very, very quickly. Yeah, and
so
yeah.
No, take a breath, JP, because what you're talking
Sure.
about, I mean, you've done this debrief dozens and dozens of times. I've heard you speak 4 or 5 times, and it's so powerful, right? I'm sitting here as your friend, and I'm reliving it as my brain dictates, and it's heavy, man. It's heavy. But what happens when we're in a critical incident is, for our listeners, is your body and your brain do crazy things. You have auditory exclusion. You have spatial unawareness, or things get real close or real far away. Time stops or speeds up. You have random thoughts, and that's what JP's describing is things that were completely out of his control. And those are things that happen to victims of crimes. And JP's describing as a law enforcement officer something happened to him, which is extraordinary. And so it takes a minute to process that. And every time JP talks about it, it's called a rupture, but it's also helping him heal. And it's also helping our listeners and people that have been through something like this heal. And that shows you the caliber of JP. So now let's go back to the bad guy, JP. He's not a little guy. He's a big guy, right? If he was big enough to have weapon held in his skin folds, he's got to have at least 100 pounds on you, right?
Easy. I think they said he was between 350 to 400 pounds.
Okay, and I would, yeah, and so because our listeners can't see the video you've shown,
Right.
So at times I remember he, truthfully, was at times had you like a rag doll because he's a big guy. You're a big guy, but he would make me look like a kid, and I'm a big guy too. So that's what I'm trying for the listeners to hear. You're basically in his lap, and you're trying to find this weapon. You think you have it, you don't. He figures out what you're doing, and then it becomes really vicious, and you have these very specific but random thoughts, right?
Yeah,
So.
and it was fast and slow at the same time, and it's like you said, the big thing is auditory exclusion. It's interesting you said that, and you've seen my presentation 3 times already so far, and it's so weird because even every time I talk about it, I feel like I'm remembering some things, or I feel like I don't address some things one time and I address it another, and I just remember the loud noises. So watching the video and talk about it afterward, I had no idea, but at the time, deputies and officers outside from the Orlando Police Department tried to shoot into the room to neutralize the subject, and I just remember hearing loud noises, but the glass in the majority of the exterior of the room is all ballistically rated, so I didn't hear like weapons fire. I just heard loud noises, and I didn't know what it was, but again, at the same time, I'm getting pummeled in the face, losing consciousness briefly, so that didn't completely register.
Well, that's another fact too. Is jails aren't meant to be penetrated, so this is. I mean, it truly is. I mean, it's an unimaginable scenario that you're held hostage. You're in a jail that's not meant to be broken into. The communications are bad in a jail anyway. the people that are in the jail with you, the quote welcoming party, it's during COVID. They're not on their A game anyway because they don't want to get COVID because we've all been told we're going to die from it. The guy has a weapon, and then your responding officers that you see and you work with, you can see the despair because they wanted to come in there and help you. And then these guys that have the courage to take shots and, shooting into bulletproof glass is just not going to work out. And then you had to see all that, experience it, live through it, and fight through it. So he's a savage, and you lose consciousness a few times. What happens when you come back?
This is what I think is the worst moment of all. So yeah, as I'm regaining consciousness, I'm sure my body's making spontaneous erratic movements that I'm not really having control over. And watching the video in reflection, you can't see it. It's something when I present, I talk about this and I show the video. I always clip out these like, it's like 2 minutes and you can't say anything. Yeah, I promise people you can't miss it. You can actually watch the full unedited version on YouTube. It's there. But I remove it for my own sanity. I just remember making movements and regaining consciousness and getting a sense of the world around me. My first feeling is like I have a lot of weight on my chest and it's hard to breathe. And as I open my eyes, I see that he's sitting on top of me. And then my face is like really wet and cold and kind of sticky. And I had no idea what that was about. That was so confusing to me. And then the last thing I remember is the feeling of metal under my chin. And so my hands are behind me. He's kind of sitting on top of me. Kind of like I always describe it as, for people ground fighting to best trying to explain it, it's kind of like in a mount, but with his legs to the side, kind of like side control, but not really. It's interesting. And he's got the barrel of the gun under my chin. And I immediately go to panic. It's the most embarrassing moment of my life. And I've done some embarrassing things. Because I've never had to beg like this. And I remember screaming and begging. I felt like a toddler throwing a tantrum. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have real control of my emotions or my reaction. I just remember screaming and begging for my life. I was like, please don't kill me. I'm begging you not to kill me. And I'm screaming and I'm flailing. My little bit of fine motor skills and fine-tuned thinking, I guess you could say, through this is I'm wearing our old version of vests, and I'm so happy we got rid of them. Big kudos to our agency for replacing them with these because these are so more comfortable. But the old ones were like a shirt material, and they were a little closer to the throat. So we're tucking my chin into my vest, trying to fight and push the barrel of the gun to the top of the vest. And I remember him just driving the pistol under my chin, and I'm screaming, I'm begging, and I'm pleading, just please don't kill me. I'm begging not to kill me. Stop, please don't, please don't. I'm also trying to raise my hips to try to buck him off to make him lose his balance. There's a refrigerator at the end of where I'm laying because I'm behind this desk, and there's a little mini fridge where they store their snacks. And I'm trying to gain leverage off of that to try to buck them off. And it's just not working. I remember I'm begging, and I'm screaming, and I'm pleading. And just when this all occurs, and it just feels like forever. I remember hearing the click, and you can't see it just because I'm looking up and I'm looking this way. And he's got the gun like this, so I can't see it, but I know when a firearm, what happens when it cycles. I know when you press the trigger. It's clear as day. It's one of those things that I could say I'm an SME when it comes to that if I ever have to testify that in court. And I know that's what's happened. I know he just pulled that trigger. I know it. And I just remember crying and screaming for like 5-10 seconds as he takes the gun, and I could see him pull it up to his face. And you could tell he's trying to figure out whatever the malfunction was. And I remember him manipulating the weapon, and I remember him drawing back the slide of the firearm and ejecting a round. And I remember the round rolling under the desk and just coming to a pause and just resting there. And I don't that mortified me. That specifically, it was unnerving. Yeah, I know there's songs out there with like the bullet with your name on it kind of thing, the moniker, and just seeing that in real time, rolling over there, that 9mm Luger round just kind of easing behind the desk.
It's unfathomable for the rest of us,
yeah.
right? It is. You can't wrap your mind around it. So that happens, and then what happens there? So at some point, you're facing death, and your lizard brain, your prehistoric brain, is kicked in because all of your cognitive skills are gone, your fine motor skills are gone, but you're still fighting. Your body, your brain, or you're still in the fight, JP. So what happens next?
So next comes, and if I'm truncating too much, please tell me, because I'm happy to expand on all of this. I really am. But I just remember it was a scream from him about him wanting to get on the phone. And then I remember the nurse shouting that my phone, because I brought my cell phone in with me, was on the ground near the x-ray machine where the nurse is at, just far out of reach. Again, it's a small room. He's behind a desk, so the bad guy can't grab it himself, but the nurse peeking behind the full body scanning machine is like, oh, it's right over here. So the bad guy's like, hey, come bring that to me. And initially the nurse is hesitant because, again, I give him all the truth of the statement, smartest man in this room at this time. And he's like, how am I trying to come up to a guy after shots were just fired and I heard a cop screaming and I've seen you hit him. Like, he doesn't want to get anywhere close to this. But after some prodding, he eventually relents, and he comes out and he has my cell phone in hand and he tries to unlock it. But obviously he doesn't know my password, so it doesn't work. And he hands the phone over to the bad guy, and the bad guy's like, hey, come check me out. So when the deputies and the officers fired into the room, and I always make a joke that they fired at me, I always laugh. I make a point, like, if they had shot into the room and killed me but killed the bad guy, all good. Kosher, no problem, no haunting, I promise. But if they had killed me by shooting into the room, because I was kind of in front of him by the angle they were shooting at, and killed me and not him, I would have haunted them for the rest of their days. That was the deal. They didn't know that was the deal, but that's what I decided in retrospect. But I remember he came over and he moved one of the chairs, because the bad guy had moved some chairs to try to obstruct his view from the side of the desk. And he looked in, and the moment he did, the bad guy pointed the gun at him, and the nurse saw my face. And that's the first time I saw my face in the video, and you can't clearly see it, but it's purple. My entire face is like drenched in blood. I figured out why it was so sticky and was so wet. And I didn't realize why. Bad guy, when they shot into the room, had gotten shot in the arm. And when I say shot, I like to equate it to just a really bad laceration or a cut. That's as bad as it was.
It was like spalling, right? It's like the bullet fragment or the glass.
He was going to be okay. The rounds continued. I remember seeing it afterward behind me, and it hit some plaster on the wall, which would later help me out in the long run, as strange as that was. And the nurse saw that, freaked out, went right behind the full body scanning machine. I remember a bad guy cranking off more rounds. I remember screaming. I remember just shouts. And I remember the sound of the door opening on the outside. I can distinctly remember how it sounds, because the best thing I can equate it is like a train coming over tracks. It is so loud and so violent, and not quiet at all. They have fixed it since then. I've been there a couple times after this, and the doors are quiet and they're smooth. But at the time, they were loud, metal clanking. It was slow, methodical, and you had all the time in the world to hear it. So that was part of the problem. And I just remember gunshots, and unbeknownst to me from where I'm at, but watching the video, the nurse had the control room like motion, like open the door, and they were initially hesitant, but eventually they open the door, and the nurse watches and waits, and he kind of peers, uses his concealment to the best of his ability, waits for the guy to not pay attention to the door, because obviously the door was open, the guy's got this gun outside, and I just, like I said, I remember hearing gunshots, and watch the video, he button hooks and he's out of there. Like, I was so impressed by his decision making. I can't begin to commend him. So, especially for the situation he was put through. Like, obviously, I come in there, I'm a law enforcement officer, I've had tactics training. No one's trained to be taken hostage, but I'm not saying I volunteered by myself in this situation, but I did contribute some elements. This guy was just sitting behind his desk and working, trying to be the best guy ever, do a job ever. He was actually very kind and polite to me when I came in. We talked for a little bit about recently getting married. Amazing guy. So I was very proud he was able to make it out of there. I didn't know he escaped, and there was times as this goes on that I would actually negotiate for his release, unknowing that he was already gone. But I love that moment so much. It felt great to watch the surveillance video thereafter. So he gets out and he's just screaming, and he just starts saying he wants a phone call. And I just remember thinking, like, a phone call. Okay, we'll make the phone. You got it. There's a phone on the desk. You got my cell phone. Just make a phone call. And I remember there was an intercom. There's little boxes on the door, like the one I hit to tell him not to open the door.
Yeah.
For them to get to my car. And I just remember hearing the voice of a correctional officer, and I knew the correctional officer. I'd encountered him a couple times, and he just said, "Come out with your hands up," and I was like, "All right, pretty direct. That's not how I know." I wasn't a negotiator. I'm still not a negotiator. I've had some training after this, but I was like, that doesn't really seem like establishing any sort of rapport. Seems kind of direct. So he's like, "Come out with your hands up," and the guy's like, "No, I want a phone call." He's making some requests, and it was a very direct, "Nope, you come out, you get a phone call after. It's an order." And I like to joke that I've seen episodes of Law and Order SVU, and I've seen how negotiation works, and this was definitely not it. So for him, just to kind of sit there and just give orders, just kind of felt like it was just jockeying my life. Like, I kind of felt insulted. Like, this is what I get. This is the best of what they can provide to me. Like, you're telling me that in any reverse situation, this is the level of attention and support they expect to give. And it bothered me.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show. Well, let's think about all the emotions you went through. See, this is stuff that you don't really get into specifically in your presentation. So you've said a few things that I'm like, I didn't know that. And because of how your brain works, right? Because it has it tied as a ball and it escapes, and sometimes it doesn't escape in order. But you went through all these psychological emotions, like, hey, I got an arrest, I got a felony arrest, cool, did my job, I'm proud, and all of a sudden, shock, fear, anger, terror, disbelief, surrender, and now you're back into a state of shock again and disbelief that, what the hell? We do more for people in the street that need a hostage negotiator, a crisis negotiator, and you're being told over the intercom, or he's being told over the intercom, come out. So you're laying there again in disbelief and probably getting good and fucking pissed off, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Okay.
And it just it drives me, and it's funny you mention it, because when I present it in a very methodical, more of a structured form, so that way it feels partial to like a debriefing, and then a case study at the same. So that way people from different elements can get something from it. I remember talking to a bunch of SWAT guys, like, oh, we since this has happened, we've trained on this. Negotiators obviously have taken a ton of stuff from this. Peer support members, traditional law, like, oh, I'm going to search people better. Talking about treating people better, not trying to. And if we can talk about that for hours, I'm happy to talk about how much we eat each other in law enforcement. That's a whole different dynamic. But it's so being able to talk like this, I don't feel as structured. I feel like I'm not having to match time with a video. So it's nice because I'm able to delve more into the moments a little bit more of what I was feeling and what I was experiencing, which is kind of nice. And so I just remember hearing that, and I don't know. I felt like I thought I don't know if the words deserve is appropriate. It's the only word that's coming to my mind right now. It broke my heart a little bit, just because I was hoping I would have something more there. Like I'm one of your guys. I'm one of you guys,
Yeah.
That hurt. I'm not going to lie. It did. So I just remember there was no traction getting there, and he was just getting more and more angry. And I'm just thinking, it's a phone call, dude. Just let him have a phone call. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
So he's got my cell phone in his hand, and I'm just like, hey, just use my cell phone. It's not a big deal. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, use my cell phone. Do what we need to do? It's not a problem. He's like, all right, give me your password. I'm like, all right, dude, I'll give you my password. I'm not saying it out loud because I don't want someone listening to this and steal my phone and maybe kind of close. No risk. So I give him my password, and he unlocks my phone, and he starts FaceTiming the same number a bunch of times. And the first 4 times, it's not successful. On the 5th time, I remember it's like, and I can see her from my point of view. It's a young, petite, white female with really bad acne. And I don't know, it was probably dyed like red, burgundy hair. And just the attitude she gives our suspect when she answers the phone. Like my favorite thing when I recall this is that she's been trying to call him all day, and she is having the worst day. And I'm just laying there with bad guy on top of me, bleeding from the face from when he just tried to execute me. And I find that comment so surreal. Like, that's the one thing you say in this moment of all days. And I remember he tries to talk to her and try to get the lead in the conversation. And you can very quickly tell that she's the boss of this relationship. So she's like, no, you're going to listen to me first. And he shuts up. Right? Again, we're in the middle of a hostage incident. There's hundreds of deputies, officers, highway patrol troopers responding to the scene. And for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, I don't remember how long this part was, but we just listened to her complain about her day and her drive, because she's over in Tampa and the bad guys from Pasco County. So she had to drive across Dale Mabry Ridge, I-275, and it was just a bad experience for her. And she's just so upset because the world's against her, and her and her mom fought. And she got to the pediatrician, and she's like, well, I'm bleeding a little bit because she's pregnant. She miscarried once. She's kind of worried, and she drives back over the bridge. And there's traffic, and it was a car accident. And that how surreal it was to me to be listening to this real time in such an intense moment in life in such a dynamic situation. And that's what my bad guy's focusing on. It didn't make any sense to me.
It's surreal. I mean, you're
right.
Everything you've just described, and here comes this lady. In my mind, she's kind of like a clown-like figure, like a cartoon figure from like Jimmy Neutron. I'm dating myself, and this violent act stops because of that phone call with her, and she stops him in his tracks to complain about her day. So there's a podcast right there in the psychology between the two of them. It's almost like that scene in the Avengers when the Hulk is raging, and what's the character's name, that the female character that touches him and calms down?
Yes,
Black Widow or something.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
It's almost like that, but the Black Widow probably looked like Grimace from McDonald's or something. But
poor Scarlett Johansson. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Although
so
she
you're
was a
laying
redhead,
there.
so
yeah. You're laying there. This is surreal. You're getting pissed off again. But what's he doing? He's listening, right? He's calming down.
Well, I wouldn't say he's calming down, but he's listening. His focus is, he's so driven to just listen to this girl just talk. But eventually he has enough. Like he's had enough. He's heard the stories. She's just venting and moaning about her day, and he's just like, and he says, "Baby, I need to listen to me." And she's like, he doesn't deserve to have his name mentioned in this podcast. That's the reason I just keep calling him the suspect. But she just goes, "Baby, I need to listen to me." And she's like, "What? What do you want?" He's like, "I need a promise you're going to be there for me, or I'm going to kill this cop and kill myself." She just pauses. She's like, "What? What are you talking about?" He's like, baby, I need a promise you're going to be there for me, or I'm going to kill this cop and I'm going to kill myself." She's like, "Eric, what are you?" I mentioned his name. He doesn't deserve it, but I mentioned it. She's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I'll show you." And I remember he rotates the phone because it's on FaceTime and it shows my face. And my face is purple. I look awful. The worst shape I've ever seen myself. And so it was just purple, dark red, like blood all over my face. And I remember her, because you could hear like her voice. There was like a shiver. She goes, "Oh my God, is he alive?" And I remember I'm laying there and I'm like kind of laying on my back. I'm like, "Yes, I'm still alive." I just, for some reason, I remember that moment so much. And he pivots or rotates the phone back to his face. And he's like, "Baby, I need to promise you to be there for me, or I'm going to kill this cop and then I'm going to kill myself." And she's like, "Well, what happens?" He comes up with this made up story that I went to the Nickelodeon Hotel and I targeted him for absolutely no reason. I planted drugs on him, and that I would just openly harass him, even though he's doing nothing absolutely wrong. He was just hanging with his friend over in Orlando. And then we got to the jail and he had enough. So he got in a fight with me at the jail and he took my gun and was holding me hostage with my gun in the jail. And I could feel my eyes rolling in the back of my head as far as they can go as he's telling this unconceivable story. It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So, they're talking, they go back and forth, and he's just like, "I just need you to be there for me. I can't live without you. I need you there for me. So I need you to promise you're going to wait for me, or I'm going to kill this cop and kill myself." And I just remember her asking, she takes a pause and she sighs, like it's a long sigh. And she goes, "Well, how long do I have to wait?" And I'm sorry, but I would hope hopefully I'm never ever anything close to this situation ever again, or any parts of the dynamic. But if my wife is ever asked that, I hope that's not the first response to her question. So I remember
love does have boundaries. That
it's something. So I remember him shouting like, "Hey, if I surrender, how long am I going to go away for?" And the correctional officer.
And you downplay it.
Oh yeah. 100%. Correctional officer doesn't have a charging affidavit in front of him. Plus, he's not a law enforcement officer. I'm sure he's seen tons of charging affidavits in court case resolutions, things like that. But he has no idea of the dynamics inside the room. And I cannot speak to correctional officer training. I've not participated or attended it myself. But I'm not sure if they take the same legal blocks when it comes to establishing probable cause and writing arrest affidavits and determining elements of the crime. If they do, awesome. But if they don't, that's also another part he's missing. So he's screaming for these answers and he's not getting them and he's becoming more agitated. And I'm like, this is an easy answer. So I'm just like, hey, dude. He's like, what? I was like, I arrested you. He's like, yeah, what? And I was like, I could tell you what the charge is going to be. And he's like, all right. What am I looking at? I was like, well, listen, the marijuana charge, you don't have to worry about that. This is Orange County. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, dude, it's Orange County. You have to worry about the marijuana charge, which I wasn't wrong. And then he's like, all right. And he's like, what else? And I just keep thinking to myself, I know he's on probation for a life felony. And if I tell him the truth, there's no light at the end of the tunnel for me. He's just going to think this is all over and he's going to kill me and then kill himself and he'd be done. So I had to come up with an answer that made sense and based in truth, but wasn't truthful there in itself. So I went along the lines of introducing contraband to a government facility and discharging a firearm. And I went that more minimalistic route, so it makes more sense to him. But I didn't think of it itself at the time, but afterward, someone explained to me, he's like, hey, you do realize you took everybody else out of the equation. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you didn't mention any of the people he took hostage or any of the people he harmed. So at that time, you didn't make him accountable for his actions. So if you didn't have him address his own accountability, that was actually a smart thing for you to do because it just made it seem like he was a victim of everything and only being held responsible for just what he just did, not the people he was hurting or hurt. And I was like, I never thought of that. It wasn't my intention, but that's just how it worked out. So because I didn't bring specific attention to that, he never thought of that because he didn't have to think about other people. He just had to think about himself. So he sits there and he pauses and I'm like, well, what am I looking at? And I'm like, you have to just two charges. And he's like, well, how long am I going to go away for? And I'm like, well, and I'm definitely wrong, but I was like, oh, you're looking at like a second degree felony and a third degree felony, like 10 years tops, maybe 8 with some probation. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, dude. And I remember saying the words, would I ever lie to you? So he looks at the phone and he goes, baby, 10 years, would you be willing to wait for me? And after a little bit of dialogue and back and forth between the two, I remember she like relaxes her shoulders and kind of exhales. At the same time she answers, she goes, I guess. And just that reaction of how nonchalantly she's got my life in her hands and just like, you don't have to agree to these terms. You don't realize that like this is not a binding contract. You can put them on block after this talk. I promise. Like, don't talk to them ever again. So they talk about the conversation and the charges for a little bit, and they go back and forth, and she's just trying to understand what happened. And I just remember her asking, well, when's the next time I'm going to see you? And he was just like, well, I don't know. Am I going to get a bail or a bond? And this time he doesn't ask the box. He looks down at me and I'm like, of course, dude, of course you are. Again, talking on, just metaphorically out of my butt. Yeah. So he's like, well, really? It's like, yeah, but you won't be able to bond out tomorrow. You don't have first appearance tomorrow. It's Sunday. And I've been corrected. They do hold first appearance on Sunday. But for some reason, I thought they didn't. And so I was like, it's going to be Monday. And then you're going to have to post a bond. He's like, a bond? I'm going to need a bond for this? I'm like, yeah, of course. You need a bond. It's you're not committed that bad of a crime. It's not that big a deal. He's like, well, how much of a bond? And again, I try to minimize it where it made sense to the charges. So I'm like, $10,000. 10 years total if it all works out against you, and you'll be able to get out on Monday. And if you do 10% with a bondsman nearby, you'll be able to, get out. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And he goes back and forth and he's talking to her and he's got some cash stored over in Orlando. And he also asked me about like what bondsman's good around there, and I have no idea. There is one near a substation that has a giant neon sign that's named after the street that our substation's on. I'm not going to recommend it because I don't want to sound like I'm endorsing him, because I'm really not.
Right.
But that's the one I gave to him, and it's not because it's the best one or whatever in the area. I have no idea. It's literally just the one I pass by so frequently that name just solidified in my head. Plus, it's named after the street my substation named on. So that was an easy one. But he started listening to me. It was very weird. So the conversation on the phone goes on for some time, and then he'll eventually get off the phone, and I don't know if he just has this kind of manic episode or something happens, but he just screams, and he just says, "Fuck it," and he takes the gun and he puts it to the side of his head against his left temple, and he just starts like screaming, and it's just kind of this weird manic thing, and he just says, "I'm just gonna do it." And as strange as it sounds, for everything I've been through and being underneath him, being the hostage, I just couldn't live with the fact of him killing himself on top of me. I couldn't do it. Oh, I skipped a part. I'm sorry. There was also a moment beforehand where he threatened the same thing because he had thought his girlfriend had miscarried, and he is under the impression that it is his child. I'm still not as certain. And he threatens to kill himself, commit suicide. And he's sitting on top of me. He puts a gun against his head. And the girl is not helping the situation. Like, she is not trying to minimize this or de-escalate this or bring it down. Like, he is just driven to kill himself. And I'm like, lady, like, you didn't miscarry. You still have the kid. It's going to be okay. You're walking through this. And I'm like, I'm having to fight to save his life, to stop him from hurting himself. And it was so confounding, because I rationally at the end of this, I'm like, why is this happening? Why am I fighting so hard for this guy's life? I just couldn't stand the idea of him killing himself on top of me. And I don't know if it's just some sort of moral thing I have within me, as that is my character. I don't know if it's part of my training. It wasn't like a cognitive, constructive thought. It was just something I just started instinctually doing. So he'll calm down on the phone, and then the phone call ends, and then minutes after that, he gets right back into it, and it's just me and him. And it's like I always estimate about 5 minutes. I always say for 5 minutes. So for 5 minutes, I really, started talking with him. I was just like, hey, dude, 10 years, you'll be able to see your son. Get out of here. It's going to be great. For 5 minutes, I really tried. And he's got the gun against his head. And after about 5 minutes, I'm exhausted. I just need a break. And I just kind of lay there quietly. And he's sitting on top of me, and he's leaning back like this. My head's like right here. And he's got the gun right here. And he kind of leans over. And there was just a brief moment of like some self-aware. I don't know if self-awareness is appropriate or just concern about my well-being. But I was just like, hey, dude, can I ask a favor? He's like, what? What do you want? And he just like, if you're going to do that, can you put the gun on the other side of your head so you don't accidentally shoot me? And he goes, oh, yeah, dude, no problem. He switched the gun on the other side of his head. And I didn't even find it funny at the time, but in hindsight, it's absolutely hilarious. Like, I find that so funny. Not only did he agree to what I was saying, and he was amenable to talking to me, but he actually had the forethought about my well-being there for a second.
It's like an inverted Stockholm syndrome.
Right. Like, that was wild.
Yeah.
And he eventually calmed himself down. Like I said, it was some sort of weird manic episode he had in that second. It was so strange. So he calms down. He just kind of sits there, and I'm just laying there with my head against the ground, and there's a plexiglass door near where my head's at. And I remember I always kind of angle my head and look through it. And for, I would say, the first half of where I'm behind the desk, there's an Orlando police officer with an AR-15 pointed in my direction. and all I'm trying to do is give them some sort of signs of life that I'm still alive. Hopefully, they knew I was still alive through the intercom system. I've read some of the back tactical stuff in reference to the incident, and things did not go great. There was a lot of communication and command issues when it came to this, and I'm not here to criticize this, but again, that
it was a shit show, and you
Yeah.
talked more about that in your presentation. But
Yeah.
there was multiple agencies responding. Who's in charge? What channel? What radio channel? What SWAT team deploys? Plus, it's Orlando. Nobody gets anywhere quickly.
right. And the most heartbreaking thing, and while I do lobby some criticism, I have far more compliments about a correctional team and the correctional department in Orange County. The emergency response team for Orange County Corrections and their hostage negotiation team was actually on scene because they had been training that day, so they were there. And I talked to one of the correctional officers who was in ERT, and he's like, "Hey, dude, yeah, we were there, and we were asking to respond, we were asking to go, and they were told to stand down. They were like, this is an Orange County thing. Let Orange County Sheriff's Office handle it. We're not trying to get involved." And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, hearing that is so strange. And then some of the difficulties that our SWAT team had to deploy there. One of the moments I heard was they were trying to bring one of our Bearcats through one of the entry gates. I had a few operators in it, I'm assuming. And I remember the driver got to the gate, and the correctional officer at the gate refused to allow them access because they were armed. And I'm just like, how surreal this lack of management and communication. And that was a real hiccup. And I heard it took them like 10, 15 minutes to get through the gate. And again, hindsight's 2020. And looking at this through, all the euphemisms you could say, like, if I always say, if it was me, I would crash through that gate and get to me. But what, I mean, I wasn't an officer deputy. I wasn't in that situation. And it just confounded me. I'm like, why are all these roadblocks we're putting up against ourselves? Like, we still even have a bad guy in the situation to deal with. We're putting hurdles in front of us even before we get to that point. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
So I didn't mean to talk too much about the operational nuance, but just reviewing.
No, it's worthy of talking about. It is. And like I said, that can maybe be part 2 or part 3.
Yeah,
or let's
sure.
come to one of your presentations. So
Yes,
you're
please.
laying there, you're trying to display signs of life to the OPD officer, and then how does this end? I mean, how does the incident end? Not what happens when you leave there, but how does the incident end where you're freed?
Oh, and there's so much more detail, and I'm happy to truncate it for now because I feel like I've been going a little bit too in the weeds, and
No. You're not going. This is your story. You can't go in the weeds with what happened to you.
But in summary, it becomes a conversation between me and him. Negotiations for whatever they were, and they were not negotiations, were not having any effect. If anything, they were antagonizing him to the point where I remember shouting, excuse my language, I know we can say anything, but I just remember looking up to the intercom and saying, "Hey, shut the fuck up. I got this." And the intercom system going quiet and never hearing a word coming out of again. So yeah, through that, I managed to get the passenger release. So I negotiated with him to release a hostage. And I was like, oh yeah, the nurse who I still thought was in there, the correctional officer, I'm going to get one of them out. And he releases his partner, which is kind of a little defeating. I know it's still getting a win, but I didn't see it at the time because I felt like I was trying to get someone who wasn't directly involved with this incident. It was kind of, I don't want to call him a bystander to it, but who's just kind of right along, who's there unfairly. I kind of felt like a defeat. I eventually convinced him to remove the magazine from the gun and throw it over the counter because I was just trying to take little steps, and I go into more detail about that in my presentation. Yeah. And then I eventually convinced him to take the gun and put it behind the mini fridge. He raids the mini fridge, has a little picnic while sitting on top of me. At one point, doesn't intentionally, but waterboards me. He pours a bottle of Aquafina on my face, but my head's tilted back, so I'm getting water in my nose, and it's simulating drowning. Fun little experience I had with my life. Convinced him to get rid of the gun, the magazine, release a hostage. I actually convinced him to release additional hostages, the correctional officer. But the correctional officer decides to wait during this until a later point. So everybody was free to go besides me and him, and we had come up with a surrender plan. And the surrender plan was he was so paranoid that he was going to be executed when he walks out of the room that he was mortified about even the concept. He'd rather just do it himself because at least it had a little bit of self-control. I'm like, dude, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't try to kill you. And there's a whole lot more detail into this in our negotiation and going back into it. But the deal was that I'd walk in front of him as a human shield between the deputies and officers outside and the bad guy. And I wouldn't listen to any commands until he was secured in handcuffs and he was going to get hurt. That was the agreed upon plan. I was personally hoping for a different resolution, which didn't happen, but it's okay. And so that was agreed upon. And we were almost there. We were almost to the point of walking out. And he had some what I'm pretty sure was contraband on him. And he was so worried about catching an extra charge for the contraband. That was what he's worried about. He was trying to destroy it. And our SWAT team realized that he was unarmed and he was standing at a sink, and they thought he was washing his hands for a long period of time, which was not true. But obviously, if you don't have the context of what's going on there, you don't catch all the information. So eventually our SWAT team made entry, resulting in him being apprehended and me being extracted out of the room. And yeah, everybody came out, alive at least. I wouldn't say unharmed, but alive.
Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputisheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputisheriffs.org.